Hello, friends! If you have anything to do with UK academia, you'll probably know that right now there are University and College Union, or UCU, members of 57 higher education institutions that are taking strike action over 8 days on November 25th to 29th and December 2nd to 4th. Strike action is being taken over a range of issues, from the ongoing pension dispute to casualisation and precarity. What the union itself says about this is, we are university staff and members of the University and College Union, UCU, and we are taking strike action over falling pay, the gender and ethnic pay gap, precarious employment practices, and unsafe workloads. University employers consistently fail to address these issues. I think that it's really important to note right from the start that, contrary to what's been in some media reports, this isn't a lecturer's strike. It's about all staff in higher education, including professional services staff, without whom universities would quite literally fall apart. I'll leave some links in the description below to more information about the strike action, why UCU members are striking, and you can follow along on Twitter at the hashtags UCU Strike and UCU Strikes Back. What I want to address in this video is not the strike itself, because I'm not striking. To start with, I'm currently a student and no longer an academic, and my university didn't meet the turnout threshold requirement, so my institution isn't striking. I want to speak to something that's been doing the rounds on Twitter in solidarity with the strike action, and that is to tell you my precarity story. So grab a cup of tea and buckle up. This story starts a long time ago in a faraway country, Australia, where I started university at the relatively old age of 20. I went from my bachelor's into my honours into my master's. If you don't understand the Australian system, don't worry. I have a video all about it coming up soon. I submitted my master's thesis on a Friday, got on a plane to the UK on the Saturday, and started my PhD on the Monday. That was an awful decision, frankly, and one that directly contributed to my declining health throughout my PhD. I had a kid in the second year and got divorced in my third year and finished my PhD, a bumbling wreck, barely holding myself together as a single parent. I wanted to finish in a regular time frame, even with all these issues, and I did. I was awarded my PhD from King's College London in 2015 and promptly fell into a heap. The reason I say all this is because it was already apparent that I had internalized the competitive and aggressive nature of academic success. After I finished my PhD, I honestly couldn't work full time. I spent at least 6 months trying to get on the right combination of medication, and some days I could hardly get out of bed. I felt daily guilt at the lack of my productivity and tried to use some of the time that I should have been looking after myself trying to get a book written. Reader, it didn't happen then, and I'm not surprised. I was going around in circles and was so burnt out, wildly fluctuating between extreme mania and mild hypermania. I finally settled down a bit after a lot of work with a very good doctor getting myself sorted out. And in the term from September to December 2016, I taught at my PhD university on an hourly paid contract. I had 10 hours of classroom time each week, including 4 hours of brand new material. I was paid for the 10 hours plus another 5 hours of preparation, but I was working in excess of 40 or 45 hours a week just trying to stay on top of everything. I had no paid lead-in time, so I spent at least 2 weeks unpaid before my contract started trying to get my head around the new material I'd be teaching. I had to mark all the assignments, but this was included in my hourly rate rather than paid separately. In January 2017, I started in a full-time fixed-term teaching fellowship in a wonderful department that was in a different city. I can honestly say that this job was the best one I've had, and it made me realize that it is possible for fixed-term positions to be decent. I still didn't have any research time, but I was allocated a decent amount of time to prepare my classes and given a relative amount of freedom over contributing to other courses as I felt I could. But that no research thing? Yeah, that. Being in a full-time position where you're giving all your time over to teaching preparation means that you have to do all your research and writing outside that time. So while I did get a little bit done, it wasn't anything near what I felt I needed to do in order to get a permanent job. And friends, that's partly because of the REF, or Research Excellence Framework, which is basically a huge pointless exercise in which research that's already been peer-reviewed gets reviewed again and marked out of 4, and that's linked to the money that the government gives universities and in turn is leveraged by departments to get things from increasingly tight-fisted university administrations. What it means on the ground for early career academics is that you have to basically have a REF submission ready to go to even be considered. One permanent job that I applied for requested, in the initial application, 4 published or soon-to-be published pieces, along with a justification of why they would be marked 3 or 4 stars. When you're teaching full-time, you just do not have the time to dedicate to researching and publishing, particularly when you're also trying to produce postdoc proposals and writing job applications and trying to keep up with all the other things that early career academics are told we need to do in order to get the permanent job. Anyway, back to the story. In August of 2017, I left that job, and to this day I wish I hadn't, because while my new 10-month teaching fellowship was nominally in the same city I lived in, it was horrible. The environment was awful. I was consistently reminded that I was a temporary part of the department and completely unsupported. My mental and physical health declined, and as I've spoken about repeatedly before, I was forced to disclose a mental illness that I wasn't comfortable disclosing, which was then reported to university administration without my permission. And that disclosure conversation was then made about the NSS, or National Student Survey, and the REF. Yes, even though I had nothing to do with the REF. I wish I'd left that job, but of course I didn't. Instead, I got worse and worse until I had a total break from reality and an extended period of dissociation, which, if you've ever experienced, you will know is not at all fun. I decided at that point to leave ancient history, and here I am, back at university. But I want to end by talking about 2 things that have to do with precarity and internalizing failure. The first is leaving my good teaching fellowship. Part of the reason I left was because someone I really shouldn't have been listening to told me that I'd have a better chance getting a permanent job from a more traditional classics department. Classics is a super elitist discipline that's still ruled by Oxbridge and London, and I've always felt a bit out of place within classics, as an ancient historian and as someone who knows that my Greek and Latin aren't really what they could be if I put in a bit more effort. So I stupidly listened to this person because I thought I had to sacrifice my happiness in the short term, that is, by leaving a department I enjoyed working in with students I loved teaching, in order to achieve success, that is, the permanent job. I also overworked myself, knowing that I would have to get the book done in order to get that permanent job. But that was completely unsustainable and directly led to me not getting the book finished, which is why I don't buy into the I can work 100 hours a week consistently crowd. In fact, the book is only finished now because I took time off between my job finishing and my master's starting, specifically to make sure it did get finished. The second thing is that the environment can be good, but it can also be toxic. And that's partly because everyone has internalized failure. The way that UK academia is set up ensures that everyone at every level feels under pressure to perform. Because the REF happens every 7 years, there's always the need to publish more. And because universities don't want to sacrifice student satisfaction, more on that in a tick, There's the requirement to win external funding to buy out your teaching and administrative duties, which of course perpetuates the culture of precarity within the sector. Briefly on student satisfaction, I want to note that what universities think of as student satisfaction is customer satisfaction. And what academics think of as student satisfaction is far more nuanced than did this person like their experience at university, but more like did this person have a transformative experience during their time here in which they learned about themselves and the world around them and feel more equipped to travel out into the world. We don't just care about students as customers, but as partners in learning and as future change makers and citizens, and fundamentally, we care about them as people. Many, many other people have written and spoken far more eloquently than I have here about these issues. I just wanted to add my voice and my story of precarity to the mix, and to thank everyone who is striking for a fairer higher education sector, because even after everything, I still want to be an academic, and I stand in solidarity with what you are doing. Thank you. So go and follow the strikes, maintain the digital picket, take lollies to the picket lines, and thanks for watching. Bye.